was somewhere in the in-between, probably 30 minutes beyond the window that was acceptable for death, and I'm here to tell the tale.
For generations, women were shamed for trusting themselves, sensing things before they happen, and believing in their own power. No one encouraged them to embrace it until now. Welcome to Trust Yourself.
Happy All Hallows Eve, everyone. I'm Elise, but my sister calls me Sissy.
And I'm her sister, Heidi.
Today, we are getting extra spooky with a guest whose perspective on death, the afterlife, and spirit will get your goosies poppin'. That's a weird statement.
No, it's okay. It makes sense. I had goosebumps up to my forehead when we were talking. So
yay.
It's a good one. It's a good one, guys.
It is. I am really excited and truly honored to bring to our podcast my friend Jody. Jody has had a near-death experience as a kid, multiple brushes with death since then. He sees spirits. He went through a very terrifying ghost encounter that is going to prime you right up for your Halloween weekend.
Yes.
And he's also grown up in a culture that views death a little differently than we do here in the US. So I think it's so powerful to shine a light on that too. So whether you're just curious about what happens after we die, or you're super spirit sensitive, or you're just here for the Halloween spooky stories, I really think you're going to love today's episode. And it's really going to challenge what you think you know about death and how our lives might be full of mini deaths in order to truly live. Yeah, we're going to get a little deep here. All right, let's bring Jody into the conversation. Hi, Jody. Thanks so much for joining us today. You are officially our first male guest on the Trust Yourself podcast, which is wild.
Congratulations.
We know that spirituality doesn't care about gender. We just happen to be women helping other women reconnect with their divine feminine. But the truth is, we all carry both energies within us, divine feminine, divine masculine. And you, Jody, I think you embody that balance so beautifully. And one of the reasons why I know you have that balance is because you don't get offended or embarrassed when I say you embody the divine feminine too. You own it so well.
It's probably one of the greatest compliments I've ever received.
Oh, yay. Good. So I am really excited to have you here, especially for our Halloween episode, because honestly, Jody, you might be the only person who I know who has this many brushes with death and the other side. And yet you're somehow one of the most alive, curious, and philosophical people I've ever met. So I can't wait for you to share your stories with us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay. Okay, so Jody, let's start at the beginning, where all great stories start, I suppose. Mm-hmm. You were born and raised in South Africa for the first, was it decade of your life? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And I know the way your culture views death and near-death experiences, it may be a little different from how people here in the US think about it, or at least how Heidi and I view it. So can you walk us through that perspective a little bit?
Absolutely. So maybe I'll even take you to a recent story, because I lost both my grandparents in, say, the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. My grandmother was the second to go. And I remember vividly being at my grandfather's funeral and watching her dance on his grave. Not on his grave, but around his grave anyway. Right. So one thing to appreciate is while I was raised there, I don't know that I had enough substantive life experience to speak to some of the more like foundational, like what are weddings like? What are funerals like? I've been to some, but wasn't necessarily raised in my like formative years around some of those things. So I've experienced them, however, as an adult, right? So I've gone back, I've experienced the culture, and maybe importantly as an adult through those eyes. And I tell you that story about my grandma, especially because as an American, so to speak, right, having been here 3 decades rather than the 10 I spent in South Africa, that came off as really interesting. It was celebratory. She was dancing. She was singing. She was not shedding tears. No one was somber. And then other people joined in. So that is all to say, right? South Africa is a very interesting cultural experience, right? We've been colonized. there are Western influences, but there is also a lot of influence from Aboriginal tribes, people that are native to the area. And on top of that, there's multiple religions that exist. So, for instance, where I grew up, you could hear the call for prayer at the local mosque. We were raised around people who were Christian and on every part of that spectrum. We were raised amongst people who had faiths that were rooted in African beliefs, native African beliefs. So I think what you end up with is, one, you have an experience that kind of reflects your culture. And as you probably know, South Africa has a very interesting cultural history, much informed by the experience of apartheid, which separated people by race. So for context, I was considered, maybe am considered colored. That's a loaded word in the US, but it has definitive meaning in South Africa. And that basically means we are not white, not Indian, meaning East Indian, and we're not native African either. You're a mix of things.
Yeah.
People who come from my culture tend to be Christian. And that, of course, influences the way in which death and funerals are undertaken. So part of it will feel normal, right? You're gonna go to church, you're gonna have a service, but parts of it maybe are a little bit different and weird through the American context. The part that maybe struck me first was you always start the body at home. So when you bury somebody, you gather the family and the neighbors at the house, and people come and view the body in the house. So everyone comes and basically views the body, and it's meant to sort of cleanse you of the desire to have a strong emotional reaction.
Okay.
That's the way my parents interpreted it for me, right? You come to the house to cry it out.
Yeah.
The rest of the day is meant to be reflective and maybe even a little bit celebratory. Then there's an order in terms of who carries the body into the house and who carries the body out of the house. So a certain set of people, particularly neighbors and friends, meet the hearse at the house and carry the body into the house. The thought is you're honoring that person one last time by giving them entry into their own home, and you as neighbors are supportive in doing that. Then when the body leaves the house, family, close family, typically second generation, picks the body up and delivers it to the hearse, get to the church, a different set of people, and so on it goes. A lot of the middle piece is kind of typical, right? There's a sermon. It's not a funeral, it's a sermon. If they can bring someone to Christ that day, they will.
Yeah.
So that happens. And then from there, you go to the burial site. And unlike, I think, in the US, where people sort of come to just one part of that experience and maybe family only for other parts, everyone is invited to everything from step 1 to 5. So that's the cultural context through which I understand death and the celebration thereof in South Africa based on what I've seen.
I absolutely love that. Because I cannot imagine my current neighbors coming to my house for my death. Unfortunately, I can't see that, and nor would I go to theirs. So I love that sense of community so much. That's beautiful. Now, I know you've told me stories of your near-death experience, and that has a little bit of a different connotation or a different view in your culture as well. Can you speak to that, how your culture viewed near-death experience too?
Yeah, I think it's probably the relationship just with death in general, right? And I think for globally as a people, I think there's a through line that most people are at the very least concerned about it. You may not be deathly afraid of it,
right?
Quote unquote, but you certainly live with some state of fear and concern that that you could succumb to that. Interestingly, we will all succumb to that. It's the great unifying experience. Right. But I think, interestingly, from the perspective that I saw culturally growing up, there was and is still a stigma associated with people who have gotten close to it and have come back. That could be a sense about what did you bring back with you? What are you connected to that maybe others who have not had that experience may not be? And certainly, maybe even in my case, is there could be a belief anyway that you now possess something that others may not have access to, that could be a tie, or I'll say a tether to a different liminal space within, we'll say the spiritual realm.
Yeah. I like understanding that because Heidi and I are always just like, oh, wow, that's so fascinating. Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more.
Yeah.
And yeah, for some people, this is kind of scary. There's a little bit more weight to it.
Or harder
Absolutely.
to talk about too. It's just
Right.
not something you would normally talk about just randomly one day.
Yeah. I mean, I found it interesting. And I think the reason you and I started talking about it, Elise, was it's not really something people ask about, right? Like it's not in the first set of 150 questions you would ask somebody. It's probably not even a thing we ask the people we're closest to. Like we expect to maybe know that about someone, but I don't provide that information unless a very specific question is asked. And you in fact are one of the few people that specifically ask.
Yeah.
Why am I not surprised?
We have the weird conversations. That's what Heidi and I do. We love asking weird questions. That said, now that we've kind of set the stage around your upbringing and your cultural beliefs, can you kind of take us back to that moment when you did have this brush with death, your own near-death experience, and walk us through what that looked like?
Absolutely. So I'd have to take you to 2022, actually. It was we're coming out of COVID, right? I think one day, not so routinely, I was listening to the radio and a story was being told about a woman, and her name was Dr. Mary Neal. So Dr. Mary Neal is an orthopedic spine surgeon, had been practicing for, I think, over a decade, maybe two. And while on a vacation in Chile, was kayaking with her husband. And during that time, she, I think along with her husband and maybe her best friend, the three of them were together and they went down some rapids, and she somehow got her body into the water so much that she was, overturned, and then was stuck with her head submerged for what ended up being 30 minutes.
Good Lord.
Right. So we would understand that shouldn't happen, likely can't happen. And if you were to emerge from that, you should suffer
brain damage,
significant, right, brain trauma.
Yes.
And you wouldn't expect that somebody like that could even put a sentence together, much less function at even a basic cognitive level. So what transpires is she lives, she's revived, and not only lives, but lives unscathed. Mm-hmm. So as I'm listening to the radio, they're interviewing her about her experience during that 30-minute period. And she describes a couple of things that really stand out to me. Now, I want to say to you, like, if you've ever had an experience where you hear someone else's and the parallels open or unlock something inside of you, this was that experience for me. So she begins by describing this sort of enveloping warmth, right? There's no one around necessarily. She's not in a crowd of people. She's not even with a person, but she feels warm and she feels close to others. I'll say that in the way that she says it, and you can make sense of it as you will. She's aware that she's having a conversation with someone, but it's not in English, and it's also not with words. It's sort of happening telepathically, you could say. And she decides that she's had a really good life. She knows she's not on Earth, but she's convinced that this is a place I want to stay. She knows that within a minute. Feels incredibly guilty about it, which is interesting because as I reflected on it, I was like, that's a very human response, right? To feel guilt and shame about that. But the reason she feels guilt is because she's got a family, young children, and she doesn't want to leave them. But she's open about the fact that if given the choice, she would have stayed there.
Yeah.
And at some point, she's encountering this brilliance of colors, sound, and light. And doesn't have, I just don't know that the English language has a way to articulate this, right? But she describes it in a way that's like, if you push on your eyeballs, do it right now with me. Push on them a little bit.
Well, I have pink eye right now, so I'm not going to touch my eye.
Make the motion. Make the motion, right? And just, if you give a little pressure, you start to see
Oh yeah.
formations of shapes and,
Yeah.
and different things, right?
Yeah.
So she likens it to like, it's kind of like that, but what you're seeing is cosmic and it's colors that are not on the spectrum at all. So Heidi's
cool.
going to just be doing this the rest of this
Yeah.
Yeah.
conversation.
She's like keeping her fingers pressed up.
And so she's describing all of this, and the sound around me is drowning out as I'm listening more and more intently. And so finally she says, and it's within this experience that she is conversing with someone who says, you are welcome here, but it's not your time. You need to return back to where you came from. And a big reason why you need to return is because you have a son, and your son will die young. And you need to be there to carry your family through that experience. Now, imagine getting that news, right, as a mother, and being given this information, and then having to return, and her son was, relatively young at the time. So also not knowing when is young, right? Does that mean early 20s? Does that mean teens? But in any case, she returns back. As I told you, she's revived, and she wrote a book. The name escapes me, but if you type in Dr. Mary Neal, you'll find it.
I'll put it in our show notes.
And so this show ends, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about her description and what I just heard. And like a bolt of lightning, it hits me that I can picture what she just described because I think I've seen it myself. So I have to tell you that story first because, at this point I'm 37-ish, and I've not really thought about the experience I had as a young child. So my experience starts in South Africa, and I'm probably 7-ish or so. And I'm out in the front lawn of my parents' home at the time, and we lived on a large sort of farm estate. It was actually a boys' orphanage, but my dad, being one of the individuals who ran that organization, lived on site. So we, of course, lived with him. It was separated by a road, and across the road was a really populated, dense jungle that you wouldn't really venture into because, South Africa is known for having a lot of things that will kill you. Snakes being a big part of that list. And Africans in general are really afraid of snakes. Probably just for good measure, right? Like you don't, if you see one, you don't trust it. You don't concern yourself as to whether or not it's venomous. It probably is.
Yeah.
So I know not to play across the street, and I rarely do. But in the front yard is the lawn. That's generally safe. I'm playing with a friend of mine, and I'm running through the yard, and I don't notice that this happens because I don't feel it. But there is a snake in the grass. And the snake bites me. And as I told you, most Africans are very afraid of snakes. So my friend sees the snake, doesn't necessarily note that it's bitten me, but does as most Africans would do and begins to scream and yell. And my father happens to be outside at that point. And it's, I want to say it's Guy Fawkes Day, which is actually a British holiday. Oh. So he's home that day, but it's certainly probably a weekday. He had taken the liberty of working on his car. So we had one car in the family. He was mid brakes. I think he was doing a brake job. So tires are off the car. Brakes are not connected. And so that's important because I got to get to the hospital, y'all. Yeah. So my friend screams about the snake. I genuinely don't realize that this has happened to me either until he looks at my leg and sees two little spots with blood running down them. And I, in my childish brain decide I'm not going to say anything. I don't want my father to know because I really don't want to go to the hospital. But, so my friend's name was Govin. Govin cannot be contained. He points at my leg and pretty much sells me out. And so my dad, in a very level way, puts everything together. Realizes this is a really scary situation, realizes he doesn't have a car, realizes that he has to kill the snake in order for them to identify it and give me the right antivenom, realizes that we're at least 25 to 30 minutes from the hospital. And also, as I mentioned, South Africa has a racial history that includes separating utilities like hospitals by race.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this is 1985, right? Apartheid doesn't end until April of 1994. So we are still in a situation where you can't, as a person of color, just go to any hospital. You have to go to the hospital for your race or races. Problematically, the most equipped hospitals are which ones, do you suppose?
Oh, of course.
The ones
white
that are
ones.
whites only, right?
Of course.
So my dad gets a plan in his head. As I said, we lived at a boys' orphanage, and the orphanage itself had a car. That car was next door, but the keys were locked in the house next door. So I think he either had a key to that house or he broke into the house. I'm not really certain
Oh my
which.
gosh. Superhero dad.
He kills the snake and puts us both in the car, and off we fly. Now, I feel pretty good. If I'm honest, I don't really understand what the big deal is here.
You're like, it's fine, Dad. Take me back home.
It's cool. But I look at the snake. It's tiny. Like, it's not even a big snake. It couldn't have been more than, just even thinking about the visual just makes me want to yak. I hate snakes.
Yeah, as you should.
Them. But it's in a jar. And here we are racing to the hospital. And I, on the way, can feel tired and sluggish. And I can feel that I'm just not able to see things as sharply as I normally might be able to. Again, right, I'm a young child, so I'm not concerned. I'm not even really thinking about dying. In fact, never during this experience has the thought of me dying crossed my mind.
Wow.
But I can read it on the faces of the people I'm with, right?
Course.
So interestingly, if you ever get to visit South Africa, you will discover that South Africans are also car fanatics. So they love fast cars. And if you are driving fast, what will happen is other people will try to race you.
I love it. I need to go to South Africa.
So he is flying through lights. He is driving on the shoulder. And he decides to go to a hospital that was known to be expensive. It was a private hospital, but they were less concerned about your racial classification as long as you could pay. Yeah. So I remember, the last thing that I remember very vividly is we were flying down the road, but there are also two cars flanking us.
Let's race.
Street racing, right? I'm pretty sure he won. I can't be 100% sure, but he was driving a Toyota Corolla, so who knows? I could be making that part up. So we get to the hospital. At this point, I feel really tired, really delirious. I'm not seeing sharply at all. And I guess if we have to look at the clock, right? A snake like that, called a Cape cobra, you should be suffering pretty significant damage within 15 to 20 minutes, depending on your frame size. I'm tiny, right? I'm 7. In fact, I'm tiny as an adult, let's be honest. I'm really tiny as a child. So by the time we get to the hospital, I bet you 20, close to 25 minutes have passed. Apparently, before we left the house, my dad said to my mom, call the pastor and tell everyone to pray, and call the hospital or hospitals and tell them that I may be coming there. And luckily, she had called this hospital, and they had already radioed or called a doctor that was not working that day and arranged for that doctor to come in by helicopter. Whoa. So as we're getting to the hospital, a helicopter is landing. And I sort of find out later that this is actually the doctor arriving on his day off, bless his soul. Oh. So what you do then is, I don't know how many species of poisonous snakes South Africa has, but it's gotta be more than...
It's gotta be a shit ton.
Right.
It's crazy.
They've got to identify the snake, though, because antivenoms, if you're not sure how those are made by injecting cows with the poison and then allowing them to develop let's say antibodies to the venom over time. And then eventually they extract those antibodies from that cow's blood, and they extrapolate that for the purpose of using it as antivenom.
I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Wow.
And they have to be specific to the kind of toxin that you've been subjected to. So here's what I remember. I remember being carried. I remember getting into the hospital. I remember everybody being really grossed out that somebody had a snake in a jar. And a couple of the nurses getting really weak in the knees. And then I think I lay eyes on the doctor, but things go blank at that point. When I come to, there's somebody in the room, and I couldn't even say who it is now. I should ask my parents. But this person lives far away, far enough that I'm quite surprised to see them. And so that tells me, I don't know if a couple of days have gone by, but some time has gone by. So as I said, I went blank, and I didn't really think about that period of time until I hear Dr. Mary Neal's story. And it unlocks this experience in me where I remember feeling the same warmth, seeing the same or hearing the same sounds, seeing the same lights, and just the overall envelopment of I guess you could say that warmth. So what I understand, I think, is that I was somewhere in the in-between. I don't know that I hadn't arrived anywhere, but I was not here either.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, find out later on that the problem with being bitten by a baby snake is this. Full-grown snakes know how to dose their venom. They know that they may have to repeat bites, maybe in quick succession, right? So they kill a mouse. They want to kill another mouse. Half hour later, they're going to need venom to do that. They know how to dose. Baby snakes don't know that yet, but they have the same amount of venom throughout their whole life. So what happens when they bite you is they give you everything. So somehow I got a full dose, tiny frame, probably 30 minutes beyond the window that was acceptable for death.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell the tale of that.
Incredible. That's incredible. And the fact that your dad happened to be home that day, everything just really aligned for you to be able to still be here speaking to us on this podcast. Which obviously that's not like your purpose to be here with us, but
your purpose is here.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Maybe it is to tell your story, right? Because maybe somebody else is going to hear this and be like, "Oh, I remember mine now." You know, you never know.
Yeah.
Did you talk to your family about this later in life?
After we spoke, Elise, I talked to my dad about it.
Yeah.
Because it occurred to me, I had not really covered this with him in any great detail. And I was thinking to myself, like, I should get the perspectives of others. I know I kind of unlocked this for myself. I wonder what his perspective was. Now, you've probably got to know my dad a little bit. He's very even keel, very measured individual, right? So his telling of it was like, yeah, there was a snake. Yeah, the snake bit you. Yeah, we got you to the hospital. Yeah, you were good a couple days later. I'm sure if I asked my mom, which I have yet to do, my mom was an absolute mess.
Oh, yeah.
Absolute mess. In fact, I'm sure even talking about it now would get her worked up.
Yeah.
But by his telling, he could not focus on the fact that I was likely going to die. He was focused on the potential that I could live.
That's amazing.
And so everything he did was in pursuit of like that outcome. All the barriers, as I mentioned, right? It wasn't just get me to the hospital. It was which hospital, because you could lose 10 minutes going to the wrong one. But he said that secretly he believed that no matter where he showed up, he didn't honestly think that somebody would decline saving a child's life.
Yeah.
Right. Apartheid or not. I tend to have to believe that that's true.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
But that's at least his telling of it.
So understanding to your culture and your family's kind of belief around this brush with death and perhaps bringing something back, and the fact that you've had a few other close calls with death in your adult life too.
Right.
Did any part of you wonder if you did bring something back, or maybe even question why you came back?
I've questioned it. I've never come up with an answer.
Yeah.
I think maybe what I've come up with is a purpose at best. Mm-hmm. And the purpose is, it doesn't really matter why I came back. I'm not really all that concerned with the why. I'm concerned with the what. What am I going to do with this? What am I going to do in my life with my life that's going to honor the fact that this is an opportunity I likely shouldn't have had? So for whatever reason, I'm here to tell the story. For whatever reason, I was meant to live. And I don't want to throw that away for even a hot second, right? I think I could spend a lot of time wondering why I'm here and why I was given the opportunity, but I'm really most focused on not wasting a minute of it.
That's gorgeous.
My mom will say, because I think I've told you before, right? I was raised in a Christian home, and my mom's dream for me has always been that I would be a preacher. My grandfather was a preacher. My dad has worked in higher ed and is a pastor. She has not gotten her wish thus far. But if you asked her, that's what she would say. You were meant to come back and tell this story and to give God the glory. That's exactly how she would say it.
I was going to say, in a way, like, you are being a pastor, you are spreading the word of life, like through these stories, and just what you're doing right now. It's really beautiful. I also, if it's okay with you, I also like to bring your wife into the conversation, Susie, because she grew up, she is Buddhist. And so she kind of has a different look at death and the afterlife. And I'm just curious, has that influenced you in any way?
Yes. And I think you too would find it really fascinating for the same reasons that I have. So the first thing I noticed, in fact, when I first met Susie's family, it was at her grandmother's funeral.
Oh.
I had not met her family up until this point. And Susie was not of the habit of bringing people home that she wasn't serious about.
Love it. Love her.
She, I think we had dated easily 8 to 12 months. It had been a while. And in her wisdom at the time, knew enough that I should not miss that experience, nor the opportunity to know a little bit about her grandmother. So when I met her parents, it was during the Buddhist ceremony where the body is actually again at the house. And there's a kind of a reckoning. This person has passed. We honor this person. And there is a mourning period. But if you understand Buddhism and you know Buddhism, you know that death is not the end, right? Death is just a reset. So while there were a lot of sad people, what I was most struck by was the fact that her dad was not sad at all, not at least in the traditional sense. His outlook was, well, I wonder what's next for her. I hope she lived a good enough life that, right, she'll be something honorable and good in her next life. I also hope that we honored her in the time that we had her. That's the reaction to death from a Buddhist perspective. It's an immediate point of reflection about the life that someone did have. So you want to live a good enough life that you earn something equal or better in the next.
Yeah.
You don't want to end up, a crow or something
or
undesirable.
A worm or a worm that the crow eats.
Yes, or the worm that the crow eats, right? Yeah. So your kind of your lived experience is informing your next experience after death. So they live with the narrative that death has meaning now. Death has meaning 10 years ago. Death has meaning 10 years from now, which I think is a really interesting way to think about something like death, which in and of itself for some people is an ending, but it's actually a cause to live.
Yes.
Which I think is really, really insightful and beautiful.
Yeah, I think that is a beautiful way to live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on that note, I want to shift gears just a little bit because more than just your near-death experience, you are also really close to the other side in that you and your mom can both see spirit. Have you always been sensitive to spirits, or did you start seeing it after your near-death experience?
I don't know. I mean, you all are the cause for me having given this some thought, right? Because I've asked myself, was this an innate ability that is actually not tied to that at all? Or did that reveal something or open something? I think what's interesting is my mom has always been serious about her Christian faith, but she has always been very open to the degree that she speaks openly with us about it. In fact, it's not unusual for her to text me to say, hey, guess who visited me today? And it's not a person, it's a spirit. and it's also interesting that we've sometimes seen the same spirit. But my mom from a young age would often come to me directly. She would never go to my sister. She would, or neither younger or older. She would not go to my dad. She would come to me. And she would say, did you see this too? Or can I tell you what I saw? And it started at this place we lived in St. Paul when we first came to the U.S. It was an old home, and we lived on the first floor with access to the basement. Now, basements get a bad rap. I don't think basements are not inherently bad places, okay? But this one was.
Yeah.
So, she would see things in that house and come to me and say, did you see that? And then the laundry was down there too, right? So
I hate that because I'm always the one doing laundry.
In the scary basement.
She would be specific about like over in that corner. A few years go by and we end up moving to an apartment community that was owned by the University of Minnesota. And here is the first time where, the patriarchy paid off for me because I, as a boy, got my own room. My sisters had to share. I know.
Nice.
I know, it's terrible. So here's the layout. My parents' room was at the end of the hallway. And if you open their door, you'd be looking right at a mirror. In between my room and their room was my sister's room. And I almost immediately started to see a multitude of things. First was a little boy who had a corner of his face removed, like we'll say this part. And it was
terrifying.
It was blown off somehow, some way. He and I would hang out in my room. He liked to listen to the radio. He liked to listen to KDWB.
Shout out KDWB.
Right?
Was it the Dave Ryan
It was the Dave Ryan. Yes, it was.
I love it.
I never got a name, but I could describe his outfit for you. He looked like he was from sometime in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Almost think of like a newsie, right? Like a newsie kind of boy.
Yeah.
Missing part of his face. Very scared individual. So what I would sometimes do when my parents weren't around, I would take my mattress and I would stand it up against the wall and I would make a fort, and he and I would hang out in that fort. And I never told my parents this until quite some time later when I confided in my mom that, there was a boy that lived with us. At which point she told me, "Oh, that's interesting. Have you seen The Soldier?" And I would say, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I have." And we never understood why these individuals were there. My mom gave me no grief about seeing things in the house, or never really even made me feel fearful of it. She would always say, right, like, you have your faith and you don't need to be scared of these things. But essentially everyone needs a home, right? Even things that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And the soldier piece was interesting because I would often, when their door was open, if I looked down the hallway, I could almost invariably see a soldier standing in the reflection, always by my room, which was adjacent to the bathroom. And he was missing limbs. So fast forward a few years, we've now moved to a different part of St. Paul. My mom had worked for that apartment community as the admin assistant, and someone told her along the way that the land was gifted by the military because that was U.S. Army barracks prior to that being an apartment complex.
Wow. When you saw these spirits, were they kind of translucent, transparent, or did they look like us to you?
Not for me. I mean, they looked like us, but I knew they were different. And it's not because it's like, oh, here's a person missing part of their face.
Yeah, that's a giveaway.
I just knew that they didn't belong. I knew that.
Wow. Okay, you have a really intense story about a ghost encounter that still gives me chills. And since this is our Halloween episode, I'm fairly positive our listeners would love to hear this story. Can you share what happened that one fated night?
Absolutely. So
hold on, I gotta go get a blanket. Just kidding. Scared already.
So Henning von Minden is somebody that I became acquainted with because he was in the home that my parents lived in with us. I spent probably age 14 to 18, maybe 13 to 18 in that house. It was a small house. And so, my mom still feels bad about this to this day, right? But this is where patriarchy did not pay off. So I didn't have a room. My sisters and my parents stayed upstairs. And I was kind of in this like off the kitchen sunroom. It was a 3 seasons. It wasn't really meant to be stayed in the winter. And mom and dad, if you ever hear this, I don't feel bad about this. I know you do. But I love that room. I love being close to the outside. I love the sunlight, but I was freezing.
Yeah.
So at some point, my dad says, hey, we should finish the basement. There's a bathroom down there. And you could stay in the basement. So he and I decide to build kind of a room. We get the walls finished. It's old limestone. The house, I think, is 1860 something, maybe 1870, very, very old home. So I begin to live down there. Now, my family's talking about the spirits in this house daily. That's how much activity there is. There are multiple people passing through. There's a woman, there's a man, there's a child, there's a dog.
You actually live in a house of 10 people.
Yes, yes. They were not on the census that year, but they were there. So this gentleman was somebody that I had a connection to, but it was cordial. And one thing is, no matter what spirit I encounter, I always assume good intent. I've yet to encounter one that has been problematic and meant to be. So it's not until I get a little bit older and a friend of mine convinces me that, hey, we should become DJs. And so we do, and it actually works. Like we end up DJing at quite a few clubs on First Ave. We're in downtown a lot. We start a company and it's going well. In fact, we run that for several years even after college. I do not tick this gentleman off until I start coming home really late at night. And I can feel it when I walk in the back door, because it's one of those houses where you walk in the back door and you've got stairs directly to the basement. I can feel the disdain in the air palpably. And so I often would say, I don't mean to offend, but I've got a job to do, right? But I felt the judgment. I felt the disdain from him.
So this spirit's pissed at you because you're coming home late. You're being disrespectful.
Pissed. And yes, and getting more and more so. And I feel him moving closer. And I never really felt like he was in my room, but certainly in the space outside. I remember coming home this one time. It's 2:24 in the morning. We dropped off equipment because we had to take everything to storage so it didn't get stolen out of our cars. So I got home pretty late. I was so tired, but I knew when I walked in the house, I was like, something's going to happen tonight.
Fuck.
And it was pretty quiet, actually. I was surprised, right? But I go downstairs, I get to my room, I turn right and I lay on my bed. And I just kind of put my arms out like this and just sort of fall into bed, right? And it's like a body jumped on top of me.
Fuck that.
Put their hands around my neck. You know when Homer chokes Bart?
Yeah.
And his tongue's out to here? That's exactly how I felt. It was like that kind of choking.
Oh.
And I knew it was coming. I knew it was a surprise attack. And what I was able to do was I was able to get my hand on my phone, and I had my dad saved in my favorites. So remember, I'm living with my parents at the time. I call, but I can't speak. So my dad picks up, luckily, doesn't hear from me. Jody, what's up? Was wondering, is everything okay? Eventually decides, I think he maybe looked outside, but he decides that maybe I'm home. And so he comes downstairs. And the moment he opens my bedroom door, I breathe the deepest breath I have ever taken in my entire life. And he somehow knows, because we've talked about it, and I've told, I think, him and my mom at this point, it's not great living downstairs. I'm actually cool to just go back to that room that needs, a lot of heat in the winter.
The 3-season porch in Minnesota.
Yeah. Like, I don't care how close to the bathroom it is. And he explains to me that he had a very similar experience when he was young. And he understood how I was feeling at that time. So in the moment, we prayed about it. He prayed for me. And then I felt like after that, I was just deeply apologetic to this spirit. So I love history. And I jump in at an opportunity to go and get a tour of the Capitol, the state Capitol. Now, I love the Capitol. I've been there plenty of times. I've never had a guided tour, though. So myself and a group of people are moving through it, and we're getting sort of, I'd say, an all-access pass. Like, we're in some of the conference rooms. We're in, like, the back chambers. Very, very unique opportunity.
This is the one I went on with you, right? Was this LSP?
Yeah. Yes, it was, actually.
Okay.
So you were there. We just didn't talk about it. So I end up in this conference room, and there is a very large mural to my left of a man on a horse. And as I turn and look at it, I am awestruck, because I'm like, I know this guy. I know this face. I don't know his name, but I know him. I know of him. And he and I have had an encounter or two or three. So I asked the gentleman who was giving the tour, who is this on the horse? And he directs me to the plaque, and I read the plaque. And this gentleman's name is Henning von Minden. This spirit is who I was seeing on that painting. So to make matters a little more interesting, right, my mom and I are sort of, for lack of a better word, entranced by this whole experience. It's never really escalated to this point. We've known that the house is very active, but we're curious. And so this is the point where we start to look at the history of this home. Do you want to guess who built and owned that home?
Von Minden.
Henning von Minden.
Oh my God. You built it?
He built it, and
Wow.
it is part of the
Oh my
St.
God.
Paul historical walking tour. Henning was German-born, came to the U.S., I think, in 1852, immediately set out to be a surveyor. He was the first St. Paul surveyor, and he led a light cavalry in the Civil War, was known for being a really aggressive German Lutheran. And if you understand German Lutherans at the time, you know that these are very, very, they are influenced by pietism, personal devotion to your beliefs, and evidence of that in your everyday life. So if you want an example,
Wow.
right, the James J. Hill house up on the hill, the house next to it, James J. Hill built for his son, but he would not give his son that home unless the son agreed to marry a woman that was German Lutheran.
Oof.
So they were sort of the original settlers of the area, high wealth, but they had very pious ways of life. And so my sort of conviction was that I was living a life that he did not agree with, and he was not going to stand for that in his house. And so for that, he and I had this interaction. And as I said, I wasn't looking to fight with this man, right? So I would often even say before I went out, I'm going to be home late tonight. Here's what I'll be doing. I don't mean to offend, but when I come back, I would prefer if we could just be cordial.
Yeah.
Please don't strangle.
Yes. That was a bit too far, sir.
Yeah. And have boundaries. You gotta give boundaries to the spirits.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so let's get philosophical for a sec, because I know you love going there. Why do you think that some ghosts stay here and are angry? And also, why are they always from the 1800s? Are there modern day ghosts?
Yeah. Yeah, there are. And that's a really good question. I've asked myself that too. It's how I view an old home, right? I think you and I have talked about this before, at least. People assume basements in old homes are scary. Now they can be, but new homes can have very strong energy, very strong spiritual energy. And it isn't often about the home itself. It's often about the land that the home sits on, right?
Right.
And we know that this area has been inhabited by people for a long, long time, long before we got here. So we don't necessarily get to decide, when we shut the door to the physical presence of others, who else might be able to transcend that door. To your question about right, why are they always from the 1800s? I have often thought about the fact that as a people, we have gone through an evolution in terms of our position relative to our piety. And my sense is that people are, well, I shouldn't say people aren't, because there are a lot of people very convicted today. We see that play out with the political backdrop of today's world. But it was such a fix of the cultural, it was a cultural staple at that time that you exhibit your piety in the way that you lived your life, in everyday life. And so people were just morally offended. And I don't know if that created a connection to place that's different than maybe what gets created now. I have no idea. I'm completely guessing on this.
I buy that. That makes sense.
But they seem to be convicted in a different way. And that has lasting effect, apparently.
Yeah. So they're still sitting here playing that role out. I'm so attached to this place. So they're like, I can't leave. I'm still here. Choking Jody.
It feels that way. And I think you had asked about why do they exist in this, well, as I said before, kind of this liminal space. I don't really know. I don't even know what that place is. What I can tell you is that anybody who's open to the idea that it exists will likely see evidence of it.
Yeah.
I know that for me, even though I was raised the way I was raised, I've been educated, I've made a career for myself, I imagine myself to be pretty balanced as a human being. I know that there are things that I can't explain, and I won't even try to, because I don't have the knowledge, I'm not sure any of us do, to really understand the world in that many parts.
Right. Absolutely. Jody, you also told me a story about how you liked to go house hunting with your mom. And there was one time you're going through like open houses, and you're going through an open house with your mom, and you both saw the same spirit. Mm-hmm. Can you tell that story really quick?
It was a long time ago, and we both didn't feel good about the house when we got there. I walked in, exchanged some niceties with the realtor who was, sitting on the inside. My mom kind of disappeared for a second. When she came back, she had a look on her face, which I understood to just be discomfort. To my left was a living room and a fireplace. And I think she approached from my right. So as she approached, she would have been looking right at the fireplace. So when I looked to my right, I looked at her. Looking at her face made me turn and look the other way. And when I did, I was like, oh, got it. That's why you're uncomfortable. And it was, sort of a translucent being, but you could tell this person was well-dressed for the era. I would say the era was probably early 1900s. Ah. Was taking in the fireplace, not even looking at us. It was like if somebody was just enjoying the fireplace and you happened to be standing around. But this person was sitting there as contemplatively as one might when sitting beside a fire and just thinking. And so we both kind of looked at each other and were like, yeah, probably not this one.
Oh my gosh.
And that poor realtor didn't even know.
No, I'm sure he was like, what was that all about? But I think at that point we were just so burnt out from living with this kind of thing all of the time. Yeah. Right. In the house that we were in at that point. So I think it was just like, nah, we're
not
good.
Not again.
Oh my gosh. No roommates in the next house, please.
Yeah.
Right.
So I want to take a second to bring this full circle here, since this episode is a lot about death and the other side. I'm curious, Jody, what did almost dying and seeing these spirits, having these spirit encounters, really teach you about being alive?
Mm-hmm. No, I love that question, because I think for me, we all almost die. Every day. The seasons of our lives change. We evolve as individuals, right? Who I was a year ago is not who I am now. That person is gone. That person is dead, so to speak. And I think when we had talked previously, I spoke about the importance of small deaths. Mm. Death is a renewal in a sense, right? So as I think about kind of the changes I've made in my life over the last 5 years, right? Relationships, decisions that I was making that no longer served me, those things had to be killed off.
Yeah.
I had to choose a new direction for my life. Nothing big, but right, you get older and you have to make choices about how you want your life to unfold. I think that you may know people in your life who have come close to death, or maybe even have come close to the end of their life, which feels like being too close to their humanity, right? Like, for instance, I've got a friend who was mid-70s and had a health scare, and it changed him dramatically. I don't think we need to get to our mid-70s and have a health scare to be that close to our humanity. We don't earn a single second here. It can be taken from us right after this call. So for me, yes, I think there's maybe some connection to, I don't even know if I'm supposed to be here, but I'm awfully glad I am. But also I think the lesson for all of us is die small deaths, get comfortable with it, because if you stop focusing on death itself, you get to decide to live instead. So die to live, that's the way I look at life. And that's what I've taken as a lesson from all of this.
Jody, I was going to ask you, if one of our listeners is terrified of death, what would you want them to know? But I feel like that just answered that question. That is...
Yeah, pretty well said.
Unless there is something you want them to know, something else.
No, you know what I would tell them? That's completely normal. And that's okay. And I acknowledge it and I validate it. You can have feelings, but you also get to choose the impact that those feelings might have on you. It's okay to fear death, but the reality is it's coming. Mm-hmm. No one can escape it, at least not yet. So you can change your focus, though. You can reframe your life, and you can choose to not focus and give that outcome energy, which you can be sure will happen, and instead decide on what will your life mean should you choose to live it instead, right? And if you can reframe it that way, I think what you get is a really honest, sobering understanding as to how you want every day for yourself to go, how you want other people to experience you, how you want to express love, how you will forgive yourself for the things you can't change in your past. you get to decide now. I don't care if you're 15 or 75, you have a legacy to leave. Don't focus on the end, focus on the now. That's what I would tell them.
Yes.
Okay, I want to tell you too about this.
I'm
Please.
excited.
So earlier this week, a colleague of mine told me that her son was up most of the night, and he was crying about something he has never brought up ever. And she said he was crying because he thought about what it might be like if he was to die.
Oh.
And I said, well, where do you suppose that came from? Did you attend a funeral recently? Did he watch the news? Right? Death is all around us, happening all the time. And she said, not that I know of. And I said, it's funny because I remember very vividly crying myself to sleep about the potential for me to die. But it wasn't death in the sense that I would decease physically. It was that as a kid, I was often concerned about what is it that tethers me, this physical body, to this consciousness, right? So what is the guarantee that if I go to sleep tonight, I don't wake up and I'm attached to someone else? And now I don't know where I am. I don't know who my family is.
That is a scary thought.
What is it about us that connects this consciousness to this body? Which got me thinking about astral projection.
Oh,
absolutely.
yes.
So that's what I was up all night thinking about, because I've heard stories of people who have done this, right? And they've actually gotten concerned that they can't get back to their physical body, that could be a potential outcome. So I said to her, it's probably going to sound strange, but I struggled with this as a kid too. I remember crying quietly in my bed because I was worried that if I went to sleep, I would not, or I would become untethered, basically. That's the kind of stuff that 11-year-old Jody was crying about. But unless she had shared that with me, I had not had this recollection that this is something I really struggled with philosophically. To be honest with you, at 40 years of age, I still don't know. I've not really figured it out, but I guess I'm less concerned with, what the outcome of that is. But I wondered if other people had that concern, or am I just completely on my own planet with that?
Well, I wasn't concerned, nor did I know about astral travel or leaving my own body, but I was afraid going to bed at night just because the prayers that we said at bed were, now I lay me down to sleep, if I shall die before I wake. I'm like, oh, wait, I don't want to do that.
Right,
I remember hating that prayer, because I'm like, this is awful.
I'm scared.
Why do we say this before bed?
No, but I will say, though, I do think that my son has astral traveled a couple times, because he has told me that sometimes he says, I had a dream again where I came down to the kitchen and I flew down, and when I was flying, it flipped my tummy and I could see what was going on. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Wow. Did you see me stressing about work? What was going on? I don't know. I find it fascinating. I also don't know the answer, but Heidi, we're definitely going to have to do an episode on astral travel.
Yeah, I think I did it one time, and I remember being like a little nervous about getting back to my body. And also like when I left my body, I was like, I don't want to turn around and see it, because I think I'll freak out if I see my body. So and that's definitely going to have to be another episode, but it is a little scary.
It is a little scary.
But hearing a lot of these NDE, these near-death experience stories, and how they explain our physical body as a meat suit, and it's not that important, it makes me a little less scared. But yeah, as a kid, that would be terrifying.
It makes you wonder, right? At least makes me wonder about the importance of soul and what that really is. Like, is that the anchor? I don't know if I ever got a chance to tell you this story, but Susan and I were farm sitting for some friends that live right on a highway, and there was a fatal accident that took place right outside. So talk about near-death experiences. Sometimes you get near death, but it isn't your death. That has been a theme in my life. So this accident took place right outside. I was the first person on the scene. The gentleman was deceased, the woman was deceased, and her dog deceased while I was holding it. And what I will tell you is that, as chaotic as that might sound, it was the most peaceful, energy-filled experience I have ever had. There's no experience you've ever had that would equate to what it feels like when you're near someone whose soul is ascending. It was one of the most beautiful, awe-inspiring things I've ever seen. Now, this was someone's beloved, right, who was unfortunately taken too early. I've had a chance to connect with that family because they wanted to know what I experienced when these individuals ascended. But I say all that to say, like, I do think there's something there in terms of our souls being anchored to these bodies. So when I say, what is it about this consciousness in this body, I'm missing like the spiritual element. And I think that's what that is. Souls and energy of soul, I think, to me, exists on a plane that is not going to be explained by science or maybe even this little brain of mine, because I don't have all of the knowledge to fully understand that. But I can tell you that I experienced it in my body, and it was something that changed me forever.
Wow. Jody, I'm going to leave it at that because that was absolutely gorgeous. But I want to say thank you so much for really opening up our minds today to the idea that death is more than just a period at the end of a sentence. It's actually quite opposite. It's just a beautiful way to live. And even if we can't put words to it, you've at least helped us get a little closer to it today. And I cannot thank you enough for everything you have shared.
You're so welcome.
Also, petition to get Jody his own podcast.
Yes, everybody, please tell Jody he needs his own podcast. I could listen to you all day.
Yeah.
Thank you for giving me this experience and honestly giving me cause to think about some of these things.
Yeah.
I imagine a lot of us have experiences that, as I said, right, unless someone asks you a specific question, these are not the things you sit down and talk to your friends about at Panera Bread.
They should be.
They should be. And I encourage everyone listening to do that. But these are also things that really make us who we are, right? I've shared some of the experiences with you that truly shaped my life. And you're one of a few people I've really ever talked to about this. So thank you for listening. Thank you for asking the question and for making space for what I had to share. And hopefully this is helpful in some respect for anybody else who's listening.
Oh, absolutely it will be. Thank you so much, Jody. We really appreciate it.
That was amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh my goodness. I am so glad I got to bring my friend onto this podcast. Jody is so great.
He's amazing.
I'm kind of bummed that we hit stop recording because we did keep going after our interview and he had so much more to say, but he's just going to have to start his own podcast.
That too.
He really is.
That too. Yeah.
So Heidi, what was your big takeaway?
Honestly, it was when he was talking about all of the like mini deaths that we die all the time. And it just had me thinking about the ego deaths that we go through and how big they feel and how completely earth-shattering they can feel to us.
Yes.
But realizing that it's all for our highest good. It's all growth and expansion and change and transformation and shedding things because life is a series of cycles. We're constantly going through. It's just like you look at the seasons. The seasons are constantly going through cycles of death and rebirth. And I don't think that there is anything in nature that doesn't have some sort of cycle like that. So realizing that it's one big cycle, but also lots of little ones within it. It's a beautiful way to look at life.
Right. Recently, the sun has been setting earlier. And I know people, especially in Minnesota, we hate it. We're like, oh no, I can't. I'm driving home in the dark.
Yeah.
But lately, I've been thinking, I actually love this because I kind of like this time to just reflect inward because summer's so busy. Everything's so busy. Our bodies physically need this time, this kind of shedding and rebirth and death. I think it's so beautiful. Yeah, we may hate the cold and the darkness sometimes, but I do think it's needed.
I do like, and it feels like things kind of allow you to slow down too into more of a reflective state. And even just going to bed earlier, it feels good. I enjoy getting into bed at 9:30 now, like 9 o'clock. Like I'm like, yes, I'm in bed by 9. This is amazing. It just feels so restorative because like you said, like we're go throughout the summer and really push our bodies. So I think listening to that rhythm, that circadian rhythm, that everything that like, it's good to have our windows open and see like, oh, it's dark out. Okay. I'm starting to feel tired.
I think my favorite part of all of his stories, it's going to be hard to choose, but there's so many great things said. But I really loved that he said you don't have to be on the cusp of death to get in touch with your humanity. I love that because I've always, every time I listen to near-death experience stories, I'm kind of a little jealous, right? I'm like, oh, I wish I could experience that, which is
feels weird to say.
Yeah, it's weird. Oh, I wish I died.
Yeah.
No.
And then the people that have had these experiences will also be like, you don't want to wish that because it's hard to come back too. And it's just,
exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that you should aspire to.
Right. But his point is you don't have to do that to be able to feel yourself, to feel truly human and experience this life. And God, I wish I could go back to my 20-year-old self and say that because there are so many things I wish I could experience pain, experience everything and fully sit in it and be okay with it and feel that death, if that mini death as another chance to live again. So I'm not saying it as eloquently as Jody could, but oh my gosh, that was such a great conversation. And I know this is going to be long, but it was so worth it. I hope you guys liked it. So now it's time to trust your tarot with Heidi.
Well, so actually, if I sound different, it's because I am on vacation. I am in Arizona at my cousin's beautiful house.
Shout out Mikey. Hey.
Shout out Mikey. Thank you for letting me crash and stay at your place. I didn't bring my tarot, but I do have a thought. As we were talking about all of this, I actually was visualizing the death card in tarot. So I feel like if I had my tarot deck, I would have pulled the death card. And it was almost reminding me of when I first started learning tarot, when I first had my first tarot reading. I remember being like scared of the death card. And my friend
the tower card, is that also the tower card?
No, it's not. It's different. So I remember vividly my friend being like, oh, Heidi, don't fear the death card. The only kind of scary card is the tower card, but it's not even really that scary. But after she really explained it to me, she's like, death is rebirth. Death is renewal. Death is transformation. It's not something to fear. And that is what was kind of coming through as he was explaining these mini deaths and everything. And I was like, damn, if I had my tarot deck, it would be the death card. But Sissy, do you have a tarot deck you could pull?
I do, but I don't read tarot, so I'm gonna see what comes up and maybe
see what happens.
Maybe you
watch it be the death card.
Stop. Oh, something just flicked out right now. I don't know. 9 of Swords.
Oh, okay. That actually tracks because 9 of Swords can kind of be like disruption in sleep. And Jody didn't sleep well last night.
Ooh,
and having it's like an active mind and like kind of like worrying about things, but realizing like Jody did, realizing today of like, it's really nothing to worry about. But there are times where we kind of get in our head and it's hard to sleep and focus on things, but it's kind of a reminder to just live through those moments because when you try to force yourself to do things, like force yourself, like just stop thinking and just go to sleep, like it's not going to work. And I've learned to kind of live with that flow and honor those because like we were just talking about, it's all cycles. So sometimes we have these up all night times, just go with the flow. And right after the 9 of Swords and you get the 10 of Swords. So it's like, you have these struggles, but it all comes together in the end and it's all for a reason.
For rebirth.
Know it's going to get better and just try to take that pressure off because I think when we put pressure on ourselves to not worry or not think about it and try to just go to sleep, it doesn't always help. So just know if you're struggling, we all do it and it's okay. And it will pass and things will exactly work out how they're supposed to.
Yeah. Well said, Heidi. Well, if this episode gave you chills, clarity, or maybe both, we would love it if you left us a review, shared it with your friends. Every share really helps spread a little bit more light. And it reminds people that the unknown doesn't have to be scary. I think the unknown is where the magic lives. So until next time, it's your move, sis.
Make it count. Bye.
Spooky, scary skeletons. Happy Halloween.